Welcome back to this latest episode of Japan's Top Business Interviews. I'm your host, Dr. Greg Story, President, Dale Carnegie Tokyo Training, and my special guest today is an old friend of mine, Joachim Rohe, who is the President of CPKelco Japan. Welcome.
Yes, thank you for coming to our office.
Yes. So, you've been in Japan quite a long time, and it's sort of interesting to know how do people wind up running a company in Japan. So what's the sort of background in your career a little bit?
Yes, it has been a long time by now, and if I look back, indeed, it's a long history spanning around several decades with many changes in the global business environment. When I joined my first employer, which was BASF, a well-known chemical manufacturer, leading company in Germany, it was at the time when IT was just emerging to be introduced into businesses. And then came, Germany still had the Deutschmark when I started to be in business. And I followed all my career through these transition and changes in the global business environment. So the rise of China, the stronger formation of the European community, the introduction of the euro, free trade, global business, and so on. And that shaped a good part of my career.
Now, was that shaping your career in Germany, or at what point did you wind up in Japan? What was happening to get you to Japan?
Yeah, my employer at that time invited me to come to Japan, and I gladly accepted.
And this is BASF?
BASF accepted.
Right. Mm-hmm.
They gladly invited me to Japan, and I was happy to come here to expand.
So, why? I mean,
horizon.
They've got thousands of employees around Europe, I'm sure. What was it about their interest in you and your interest in Japan that worked together to make you accept that offer?
Yeah, I think it was the sense of my boss at that time, who from his global experience judged that I would be someone who could work in Japan because of a personality and way of doing things, mm-hmm. to be good as a part of the team in Japan.
So at what point is this? What year are we talking about that he says, okay, Joachim, I think you'd be great for Japan BASF, we want you to go, I'm happy to go. What year are we talking?
We are talking about 1995, 1996.
1995, 96.
96, okay. Yeah. Right. And I came to Japan and started to work as a representative of the intermediate chemicals division in the business, working with the colleagues at that time in the Japanese market, selling and promoting intermediate chemicals.
So were you a chemical specialist, a chemist, or a chemical engineer?
Yes, I'm a chemist by training. I made a degree at the University of York in England.
York?
And
okay.
Yes.
I've been to York.
Yeah.
Charming place.
And I developed my career out of that,
yeah.
Being based basically on the great education I had in Germany, mm-hmm. and in this combination out of the possibility to learn and study also in the UK. I could expand my language skills.
Yeah, well, it's a big part, because your English is excellent, of course. So in terms of, you come from Germany, you come to Japan, you're part of an existing team, you've got a role there. Now, was your role to be running a team, or you were put in charge of a team when you arrived, or what was the situation there?
Yeah, the situation was to connect headquarters with the local team.
Mm-hmm. But your particular role, were you, okay, Joachim, you're going to run this team, or Joachim, you've got this job. I mean, you could be an independent contributor, or you're contributing through running a team.
No, there were different phases. I mean,
right, okay.
You come here, you need to adapt yourself, you need to learn where you are, who is doing what, and so on and so on. And the initial role was to connect knowledge, or make knowledge transfer from headquarters to the local organization, develop the market understanding, see space where to grow the business, and these kind of activities, which then later led into the company, entrusting me with a sales team in the Japanese market after the first 2.5 years.
Oh, okay, okay.
So and then I was looking at a sales team with colleagues in Tokyo and Osaka for a part of the chemicals business.
So was that your first time to run a team, or had you been running teams in Germany?
No, that was factually the first time.
So your first leadership experience is here?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, and what was challenging about that?
Challenging about the leadership in Japan is, I mean, the key issue is language.
Yes.
I mean, let's turn back 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Communication was very, very different in the sense that the toolbox you had available at that time was without the automatic translation tools or anything like that.
Yeah.
And the English level, as you know from your experience, has been much lower.
Yes.
So that was a big challenge, and that encouraged me from early times to look also into the language, learning what I need to be effective in business and helping myself and the team to work towards the achievements of our goals.
Did you have formal Japanese lessons?
No, I never had a formal Japanese training, like attending a university or learning that. I did chemistry, and I did that next to the job.
So you actually, while you were here, you learned Japanese on the job?
On the job.
That's amazing.
On the job, yes.
That's amazing. That's incredible, really, because it's so difficult to learn Japanese.
It took a long time.
Full-time student, it's so hard.
Yeah.
So, apart from the language, you know, German culture, Japanese culture, obviously different. German business practices, Japanese business practices, obviously different. It might be BASF global, but you're still in Japan. So they do things in a Japanese way here. So what were some things you noticed initially, that's different about running a Japanese team to, say, perhaps running a more international team back in Germany?
The major difference is not the business itself. Business is done around the same principles and conditions as everywhere else in the world. So the key point here is how things are being done, how issues are being addressed, how the team communicates inside itself, how individuals in a team relate with others. That is in essence the challenge, because you do not see obviously who is the decision maker, you do not see immediately who is the opinion leader, who is the who drives the thoughts in the team. I think that's a big difference.
I guess we're used to meetings being the sort of deciding point for everything. We come to the meeting, we come prepared, we debate it, we decide it, we move on, but perhaps that's not how you were finding it when you got to Japan, I guess.
No, communication is happening on various levels. Outside of the office, inside, between people, and you're very familiar. I mean, people call that nemawashi.
Nemawashi, exactly.
Working out what is the opinion, building a consensus before a team decides to move on into what direction. And that's a big difference. And then you have the...
How did that feel to you? Like, for example, you know, coming from Australia, where it's very Western in the sense that we make decisions in the room, all get in there, make it, move on. The idea of something sort of going on beforehand, and collaboration and coordination and cooperation all being done to sort of harmonise what we're going to do, and then the meeting is a rubber stamp to sort of formally approve what we're going to do is quite a different approach. So I know for myself that was a bit hard to adjust to, like, why are we doing it that way, you know?
Yeah, and it's, I think it's a natural thing, transitioning from one culture or one space you're very familiar with yourself to another one. I mean, you don't come and carry forward with you the greatness or whatever you have achieved in one place into the new environment. You start to rebuild that again. And teams can be challenging to the point that, and organizations can be challenging to the point that they're not automatically welcoming you as somebody who comes from headquarters to see, learn, understand what the business is doing here. So there are automatically challenges built into that role.
And how do you overcome those challenges? What did you find worked well to overcome those sorts of challenges where, okay, you're from head office, okay, well, we're not sure about that. How did you get around that?
Yeah, it's a very important thing to understand your environment. So where you're in. And let me elaborate that a little bit deeper, because for me it's like in biology. So if you're a frog in a pond, you need to understand your environment. You need to know, where do I get food? You need to understand who are my predators. You need to understand, what does the bird look like that's going to feed on frogs. And if you don't understand that, you don't have a long time to last. Now, business is a bit more gentle than that, but it's equally important to understand how your business environment is looking like. And the economical biotope is essential to understand. And it includes not only the team workings inside the company, it doesn't include only how leadership, the top of the business, is influencing it. It also defines all the relationships in the business environment, from regulatory authorities to customers to other players in the market space, where that is relevant. And that is an understanding you need to build.
And also, I'm guessing that the type of, I don't know what your exposure was like to sales in BASF in Germany, but I'm absolutely positive it was being done in a different way here. So when you first started running a sales team, it must have been for you, oh wow, this is done quite differently here, or not what I would have expected. So what were some of your initial reactions to the way things are being done from a sales point of view with clients?
There is a thing which is stunning here in Japan, that is the depth and breadth of the market. There are many, many companies, there are many, many players that you don't know normally when you come from the outside to Japan, because it is and it has been at that time a very domestic market with, of course, foreign companies operating here, but also a very strong Japanese industrial base. So the first point is the stunning complexity you can meet in there.
And we've attended these talks different times by famous leading economists here, and talking about the market share in Japan being incredibly split, very disparate, and very few occasions where big players have big chunks of the market. It's a really vigorous, competitive market, hard to get market share here. So that would be part of that process. So in terms of, you start to run a sales team, right? And that's a very specific activity. It has certain skills. It's also straight to the P&L, right? It immediately impacts the revenue, so that's an important thing. What were some other things you noticed that was challenging to lead a sales team?
People relations.
So you mean internally or externally?
Everything.
Everything.
Because it's about, how do you build trust in your team, with your colleagues you're working together, with a customer base. And it's more like, you need a first visit, you're being introduced. You need a second visit to confirm that you're still there. And then comes the third visit, where people start to, was introduced, is still there, maybe has something to say, what is relevant and interesting for us. And that connects back to the biotope, ecotope I was talking about, because you need to know your partners. You need to build the understanding, who am I actually working with, what is their interest, what is their business strategy, and what are the drivers that influence their business, and how can I connect with my business to them. And you may have an idea what that is, but that may not, and it probably doesn't if you're a newcomer to Japan, that it automatically connects to what the customer is thinking about, or your business partner. Because there's more complexity than that, because sometimes you have customers, but you also have business partners, you have suppliers, cooperation partners, and all of this, and their strategic intent, mindset is different. And that is very important to understand.
And so, in terms of, you spent how many years running the sales team? Was it 3 or 4, you said?
In the very beginning?
Yeah.
Yes, that was like 4 years.
4 years. And then what happens after that?
Yeah, afterwards I moved on. Company invited me to go to China.
Okay.
I went to China, working out of Shanghai for the fine chemicals business, looking after animal nutrition, human nutrition, all the vitamins, cosmetics and pharmaceutical excipients and ingredients in the Chinese market, including manufacturing responsibility in the northeast of China.
How long were you in China?
The team got bigger, 4 years.
4 years in China.
Yes.
And then you came back to Japan?
I came back here and...
with BASF?
Still BASF. Running the crop protection business in the Japanese market for then the next 6 years.
6 years?
Yes.
Right. And what was that, as like a division head, was it? Or
there was a company called BASF Agro KK.
So it's a separate entity.
Separate entity.
So you're the president of that separate
Yes,
entity.
exactly. And that was then later on integrated into BASF Japan as a business unit.
So how big was that subsidiary company?
So like 130 people.
So quite big.
Yes. Yeah.
Quite big.
Yes.
So I think, how big was the sales team you were running before in Japan?
I started with 10 people.
10, right?
Yes. And then the China team was like 80 people.
So you're
all
scaling up.
The next one was scaling up.
Scaling up quite a bit. And so what was interesting about that in terms of, the dynamic changes, of course, as you get more people. You've got now people below you who are running teams, and you're supervising the people running the team, so that's a different dynamic, and you start to get further away from the client. You don't talk to clients much when you've got 180 people or something. So what was challenging about working through your team leaders or your division heads?
Working with a larger organization, I personally find easier than working with a smaller team.
Why is that?
Because you can delegate responsibility more to what you would have in bigger organizations. Experts heading sales, operations, supply chain, and so on, marketing for that matter. And you're working together with a team of leaders where the leadership is different. Leading leaders has a slightly, in my point of view, slightly different aspects. Has different aspects to it.
Like what would be some different aspects for you?
It's more coaching and guiding in the direction of so in operations, what are your standards, what are your processes and procedures, how do you respond, what is the framework set by the organization, how individuals in the organizations are being organized and things like that. So you must communicate, and that is very important, the goals and objectives of the business, but you also need at the same time set the standards for how individuals should interact with one another, and what is important there.
And in an organisation that size, often at the top we think we've communicated the direction we're going, mission, the vision, values, the whole works. We think we've done that, right?
Yes.
But in my experience in Japan, I go into companies, we do leadership training, I've got 30 leaders in the room and middle managers. And they have the beautifully framed, vision, mission, value statement on the wall. You take that off, you spin it around, they can't see it, you ask them. These are the middle managers, right? What's the vision of this company? Nobody's got a clue. How about the mission? Nobody's got a clue. Out of 30 people, there's usually about 5 values. Collectively, they'll probably get 2 or maybe 3 of the 5 values. They don't get them all. So I often think to myself, wow, the president in this company is sitting on a higher floor somewhere, imagining that what they, as a leadership team, have explained is now understood right to the very bottom of the organisation. We're all beautifully aligned, we know what we're doing here. But I always think to myself, well, if you can't remember it, how on earth are you going to activate it and live on it, execute it? So what did you find about that when you actually had a larger scale to get the certainty that what you believed you'd communicated was actually being understood down the bottom?
Yeah, it connects to my comment regarding understanding the business setup, environment, what is your ecotope you're operating in. So to understand gives you the capability to turn what you're aiming at into the right language to the employees. So in the process of understanding where you are, who you're working with, what is the customer base, what is the business partner base, who is essential for your business, you learn the language, the ideas, the understanding, and then you can transform it for your specific part of the business in line with the overall company direction in bigger organizations.
So when you were, that was BASF, and then how long were you in that role? That was, you said it was like 6, 7 years?
Yeah, my career, and I'm grateful for that part, it was 25 years with BASF overall.
And that was your final role, that one?
Yes, the final role was
that one, right?
the
and then what happens after
business. I changed to an American company that is doing drug delivery solutions from injectables, soft capsules and so on.
And that was here?
That was here in Tokyo. I stayed in Japan and I followed on with that with Catalent, with that company.
What was your role there?
Country head.
Country head,
yes.
Okay.
I was president and representative director of Catalent in Japan. With
how many people?
That's about 240 people.
So we're getting scales going up again.
Yeah, it was going up.
More people.
Yes,
more
and
complexity.
it was a manufacturing company with a big manufacturing site in Shizuoka, servicing the Japanese market in.
What was challenging about that, going from from a German-based experience of business? Now you're with the Americans, and you also got more people in Japan. What was some things about that was challenging for you?
It was a new business.
Oh, okay.
It was a new business in the sense of the agrochemicals business is different to the pharmaceuticals business. It's a regulated business activity, but the market itself is different. And there was a good team, and there were capable employees, very responsive, long-term in their activity, well-experienced, which was really good to work with. And challenging is to bridge between a headquarter that is very aggressively, quarterly, business-oriented, than to a company that maybe has a longer term, not strategy, but longer term business focus and is prepared to endure a certain period of business figures, challenges, we put it like this.
Yeah, I'm sure that quarterly earnings report, American-driven mentality is quite tough in terms of having a long-term view on where the business needs to grow. So you came in as the country head, so the people there have all been working there for a long time, I presume, and then you turn up. So how did you go about getting their trust? How did you go about establishing your position there as the president, as the country head?
So the steps to take is to do a kind of due diligence. So meaning to assess what are the different parts of the business, how are they being set up, what is going on in the place. That is the first step. And due diligence always means talking with people, getting information, and understanding what the processes are. So, and that gives you a feeling for the organizational capabilities, endurance and skills in that team, which you then with your colleagues in HR and the other leaders of the separate functions, you can then work with to improve things. No? Or develop people and give people a chance which they didn't have before in the organization. So there's always an evolution, there's always a past, but it's a changing business environment requires to adapt and change to what are the challenges for the future. And this is what makes leadership
Mm-hmm.
and effective management so interesting,
Mm.
because you need to decide what you do today to impact what is happening in the future.
Yeah.
And that in the Japanese context works as well as everywhere else. But to find out what it is more challenging. It requires more time.
Why is that?
Because due to the language barrier,
Mm-hmm.
due to the way things are being communicated,
Mm-hmm.
people do not immediately speak out,
No.
yeah, which is a well-known
Mm-hmm.
phenomena.
Mm-hmm.
No? But people in Japan are very open, interested, and they want to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where you need to find the key
Mm-hmm.
to explain how you can contribute
Mm.
as a leader to make them successful.
Mm. Mm.
Because then people start to take initiative, contribute their ideas,
Mm.
take controlled risks
Mm-hmm.
to advance the business.
So often, though, in Japan, there's a requirement that people want to be given a lot of direction. You know, tell me what to do, and I'll do it perfectly. But what you're talking about there is a little bit more giving them the freedom to make their own decisions and maybe, you know, have a bit more flexibility than maybe a typical Japanese company would give them. So how did that work in practice? Because, you know, often people tell me, yeah, well, the Japanese team want me to tell them what to do, but I'm not here to tell them what to do. I'm here to help them work out what they should do. And there's that little bit of tension between the two.
Yes, there is.
Mm.
And that tension doesn't go away because you
Mm.
have business objectives to fulfill.
Mm.
And it's not that you have endless time
Mm.
to help individuals or teams to evolve themselves.
Mm. Mm.
No? So generally my experience is that people are well educated, curious, knowledgeable, creative,
Mm.
and interested in advancing their business.
Mm.
And people are very broad in their thinking, have many ideas, but they are not automatically brought out.
Mm.
So, and this is a real asset you have in any organization in Japan out of which you can build a successful business. And the way to do it is to give people confidence and trust
Mm.
that what they are saying
Mm.
is basically being respected,
Mm.
maybe modified,
Mm.
but essentially then also recognized for them as their
Mm.
contribution.
Mm. Mm. And so how long did you run that company for?
That was 4 years.
4 years. And then CPKelco was the next?
I moved here and I'm now close to starting the 8th year
Right, okay.
in CPKelco.
Okay. If you want to be successful as a leader, do the Leadership Training for Managers course. All companies need people who can both manage and lead. Leading people screams out for real skills in communication, dealing with all different types of people, being excellent at innovation, planning, delegation, handling mistakes, doing performance reviews really well, and inspiring and motivating the team. Do the Leadership Training for Managers course now in either Japanese or English. Are you doing business with Japan? Do you really know how things work? Japan Business Mastery provides the answers. Do you have the right networks and know how to create them? Do you know how to get on the same wavelength with Japanese buyers? Do you know what being trustworthy looks like from the Japanese perspective? Japan Business Mastery is based on more than 30 years' experience in Japan and will become your go-to guide. Want to succeed in Japan? Buy Japan Business Mastery now. So again, you're transitioning across a slightly different industry this time. Can I say that? Yeah?
Yes.
So what was that like going?
Well,
from...
it's a B2B business. We are servicing the food and beverage industry with hydrocolloids that are substances derived from nature, either by fermentation or extraction, that are used everywhere where rheology matters. So we impact haptic, that means how things are being felt on the skin, how it is felt in the mouth, mouthfeel, and any other kind of where you need to control the flow of liquids. That's what our business does, and we have a long history in the Japanese market.
How long have you been here?
We will have a 60-year anniversary next year.
Same as us.
Yes.
63.
Yeah.
We started in Japan. We're sort of at the same time.
Yes, we go well back, and we are proud to be a leading supplier of these products to a broad base of, I would say, almost all food and beverage companies in Japan. And almost everyone is our customer and has contact with our products on a daily basis. And it's a very, very interesting business which we are running with our business partners here in the Japanese market for the last 60 years.
So it's a well-established company, and then you are now the president. You come from sort of related background, I guess, through the chemistry and whatever, but it's not exactly the same thing. So when you turn up, they're all experts in this business because they've been doing this probably for a long time. How do you gain their ability to follow you and your ideas? Because they've probably got much more experience about this than you've got. How did you go about getting their fellowship working?
Yes, it's a very interesting business because we are combining consumer trends through our customers and help them to broaden their portfolio, what they're offering to the market. And with our technology and innovation, we are enabling the food and beverage industry to produce new products. And there is a lot of expertise knowledge in this. It is a lot of science involved. But in the end, it's an individual that judges about it. But let me answer your question, because that's about how do you build recognition and understanding in your business space. And it is about talking to the people, understanding what they are doing, how they want to progress, what their goals are, and ensuring that they get what they need on a timely and regular basis. So it's a B2B business. So there is a fundamental need for our products, and it works through the people who are representing our business partners, our customers, that receive the introduction of our products, our explanation, our use advice, and so on.
So the headquarters of this company is located where?
In Atlanta.
Atlanta,
in
right?
Georgia.
So
yes.
Interesting. And so if you think back, very broad experience across a number of companies and industries in Japan, what things have you found work well to get people engaged in their work?
People are engaged in their work when they're being taken serious.
How do they feel that they're being taken seriously? Why do
people
they feel
are being taken serious when they're being listened to and when they are have the feeling of being understood. But it's a little bit more than that, because we are talking about mature, experienced business people who have a long experience, have done a lot of successes, had their failures on the way, and basically are very solid in everything. Still, there's always a possibility to work with others, and it's about feedback giving, it's about communication, and it's about recognizing the contribution of the individual. So when does that get interesting? It gets really interesting when you see that someone doesn't exploit the full potential. So I always look, what can someone do better? What is the space where someone can develop into which he or she hasn't tried yet? And this is, for many people, transformative, because they have been given a role, they have been filling in that role, but the level of feedback that they received was not sufficient to trigger them to think about themselves, what's the next thing I can do? And what is the next thing I can do for the business? And what enriches my way of doing things? That has a very, very powerful impact. Again, that takes time, because you need to have the business events that allow you to give this feedback and say, or this guidance and say, okay, if you would have done this like this, it might have had this impact. And it's also a learning opportunity for yourself, because you get from an experienced business partner or an employee, you get a solid feedback about what is possible, what is not possible, and you can fine-tune your business goals according to this. Well, how to get something done effectively with the people that are entrusted to you in that responsibility.
One of the elements to get innovation is to have people caring about making the business better.
Yeah.
So what things have you found? I don't mean R&D innovation, because they're specialists, they're scientists usually, they're very specialised people doing R&D. I'm talking about just the average person inside the company, because we've all got ideas, as you said before, we see things, we're maybe not expressing it, but we've got these ideas. What have you found worked well to get that innovation coming out of people? Do you have any particular methodologies you used?
It works well with you need to create innovation in a technical space like this. You need to have different sources of information. So you need to deeply understand what the customer is needing, what the challenges of the customer in a specific formulation or technical environment. Then you need to have the expertise. Then you need to have the expertise of the process. So it's how to bring the right people together to provide the right solution to an issue. That is what makes innovation, I believe. So it's a combination out of the skill of the individual, the sources of information available, and the deeper understanding of the available technology or technologies to tackle that issue. It's in the B2B business environment, in a technical environment, it's these ingredients that drive that.
Did you find any particularly successful brainstorming techniques that you've been able to use over the years with teams? Because obviously people in isolation have ideas, but when you bring them together, theoretically anyway, the possibility is there to get even bigger, better, bolder ideas, because you're drawing on a group experience and intellect. So anything you found that works particularly well?
Yes, what works well is the exchange across the global field of expertise. So you have trade shows, exhibitions, you have internal team meetings where information is being consolidated, where information is being shared, where people have by themselves in their career done certain developments that are basically where they have worked on those issues and can provide their ideas to it. And then it's being modified or adapted or thought about. That's what I think a very, very important thing is, to see the diversity in the team and to understand who can contribute what in what way best. And it's not automatically that person with this kind of education that has the answer. It could be another person out of another sphere, for example, out of the finance team, who has asked the right question and encourages the right response. So diversity in the team, utilizing that knowledge, is another contributor to the innovative process.
Okay. And you've talked already about trust, getting trust, because as you moved from your roles, you have to keep building trust with new teams, right? So if you're going to sort of encapsulate things that work for you that you found, because once you've done it once and you go into a new organisation, I know you said before you're not bringing a template from what was before and just forcing it on this new organisation, but you are bringing insights, you are bringing experience, things that work, things that didn't work into the new role. Anything particularly that you saw looking back, you thought, well, actually that worked pretty well in terms of building trust with people? Anything that sort of occurs to you about that?
Yeah, there's. I would like to break it down into 2 or 3 pieces.
Mm-hmm.
So one piece is a disciplined way of running the business
Mm-hmm.
and applying the tools that are there.
Mm-hmm.
So, in a company usually has a budget process. The company has an annual business plan,
Mm-hmm.
and the objective of a sales organization is usually to achieve
Mm-hmm.
the financial target set by the organization.
Mm-hmm.
So to achieve that, you need to have a process in place.
Mm-hmm.
And that process needs to be consistent,
Mm-hmm.
understandable,
Mm-hmm.
and be supported by the employees.
Mm-hmm.
So then the other part is working together with people is respecting what they say, respecting what they do,
Mm-hmm.
and aligning their ideas with the overall business goals.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a process.
Mm-hmm.
It's similar to our communication here today,
Mm-hmm.
where we are trying to learn, or we are learning from each other
Mm-hmm.
and building an understanding about the topic we are talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So this is this part.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is the duty of the company to take care of the employees, think about what is on their behalf.
Mm-hmm.
And we are just coming out of this pandemic situation, which was a continuous challenge for everyone in management to decide what is the right decision, what is the right thing to do on behalf
Mm-hmm.
and for the employees.
Mm-hmm.
So in these combinations, that is where individuals say, okay, I'm understood, the company respects me, the people I'm talking to are helping me, I can help them, and it's an environment I want to be in.
So an extension of that is creating culture. So, I'm sure BASF had a culture in Germany, it had probably a culture in Japan. All these different organisations you've worked in, they've got their own cultures at the headquarter level. But when you get to Japan, you've now got the Japanese culture as one of those components of culture, and then you have organisational culture, and it usually is a sort of blending of those two things, because obviously what works in America, for example, may not necessarily work here. People may not be particularly enthused by some idea in the culture there that doesn't apply to Japanese culture. So what things have you found works well in building a culture in the company you're in? I'm just saying, not just taking the umbrella culture, because it's the overall culture of the organisation, but it's reflected in Japan in a different way usually. So what has worked well in building a local culture?
Yeah, there's 3 items I think I want to mention to you here. One is what I say, nothing happens by chance.
Mm-hmm.
In Japan. So there's always a solid explanation why things are as they are.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes things that are obvious for you, because they have been done in another place and another experience, are not automatically the right choice here.
Mm-hmm.
But there's always an explanation that is, in my experience, solid enough to convince why an approach or direction should be different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The next point, which I think is important to consider, is that building relations in Japan is not always about talking just on the business figures or on the result, or can you place another order to us, or when are we doing the next big project, building a new factory or something like that. It is also about spending personal time in the right amount to give the business partners a chance to recognize who you are and how you are. That's an important important item. And the next one is where I think importance is in time.
Time.
Yeah, because time in Japan is, as we talked at the very beginning, the process of aligning everyone's opinion takes time.
Yeah.
But then implementation usually can run fast.
Yeah.
So, and that is a difference. And then another component in that, what I find so interesting is naturally nobody will say no to you. Of course there's a no, yeah, because if business objectives are not aligned, there will be a no. But the no is not being transferred as clearly as it would be anywhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's having to read an explanation that actually means no, but is not stated as no. That's reading between the lines, so that's actually a no.
Yeah. Yes. And sometimes it's felt as a no, but it's not a no. It's not today.
Oh yeah.
Maybe a couple of weeks later or some time later.
Not no forever.
Yes.
Yeah, that's always a tricky one to work out what is an actual no in Japan. Although I must say, when I was working in Osaka, it was much clearer there. You know, I found the Osaka business culture was, yes, we're interested. Oh, no, we're not interested. Very upfront, no hesitation, like in, out, boom, done. Which is sort of easier for me as an Australian to understand because it's a no, it's a clear no, but okay, I move on and find another client. But when you're not quite sure, you think there might be a possibility, you're sort of hanging in there, but it never quite works out, but you've wasted a lot of time perhaps that you shouldn't have wasted. And what about if we were going to give some advice to people who are going to be sent to Japan? They don't know Japan, they don't speak Japanese, but they're going to come here and run the organisation. If you were going to give them some advice, what would you give them?
Invest time to search for understanding. Remain yourself. Don't try to adapt to be different in something. And I think over-communicate. Because if your objectives and goals for what you want to achieve are solid enough, people will understand and follow. Or as a specific gift from the Japanese employees or employees you're working with here, you will get a feedback that will support you to advance and make your own goal better. That's how I look at it.
Should they learn Japanese?
Japanese is a very, very important aspect. It's interesting for me that that question is asked because would anyone in the US question if English is a necessary tool of working in the US, for example? I think it's fundamental. There are ways to get around it. Not for every role and not everyone in a very short time can conquer the language, but language is a goal to the culture, to the society, and any moment spent on it trying to understand it or learning about it is important. And the better your language capabilities becomes, the easier it is to do business. Because language is a tool that transfers the understanding.
Your point before about would anyone in America imagine you could work in America without speaking English? And the other thing there is, when people come here and they don't know Japanese, they're also illiterate. They can't read and they can't write. So they don't think of it in those terms. But in fact, imagine if you were in America and you couldn't read or write in that business culture, how would that be? Well, that's actually you here in Japan. That is exactly you. You can't speak, read or write in this culture. And that's when you sort of think of it like that, the imperative to actually learn something has got to be fairly strong, I would imagine. I mean, again, I can understand it. You're here for a 3-year posting or a 4-year posting. They might make the calculation, look, you know, I don't have enough time, I'm too busy, you know, working, where would I find the time to study? how much would I master Japanese, because it's quite a complex language in that period of time. Maybe I just give up. And I think that's probably a lot of calculation too. People just don't think it's worth it.
So I have found Japanese to be very, very positive, responsive to language, even if it's not really correct. No? Because nobody who learns a foreign language starts after 2 weeks to be perfect in that communication. It's a journey. And Japanese appreciate that and are very tolerant to that. If you want to, let's say you want to make a joint venture in Japan and you need to make a Japanese contract, you will need experts that help you. But to make a report and relationship to the business partner who is entering that venture together with you, if you have shown your interest, your desire, your personal conviction to do that, language is one tool to do that. It's not the only one, but it's one. And I think, personally, from my experience, I think it's a very important one. Can you be successful in Japan over a certain period of assignment without the language? Yes, it's possible. But you need to operate differently. And you will always have someone who is speaking for you. Yeah, but obviously, I mean, you cannot learn, if you go to 6 or 7 countries during your career, you cannot learn all the languages. There are too many. But it doesn't mean that you cannot build a rapport to people.
So, how many years altogether now in Japan for you?
27.
27, yeah. Gets away in you, doesn't it? And there's 4 years in China as well, so you've been away from home for a long time. In terms of, are there any things I should have asked you about leadership in Japan which we haven't covered so far?
Yes. The note
Let me ask that
was,
again. Let me ask that again,
yes.
and we'll just cut this bit out.
Yes,
So I'll ask you again. Is there anything I should have asked you about leading in Japan which we haven't covered yet?
Yeah, I think what makes Japan so much fun to be in.
Okay.
Yeah, and Japan is very rich in culture, has a fantastic way of doing things, because it's always kind of friendly, even if it isn't, right? You can perfectly disagree on something in business, and you have, as you know very well, there can be very intense interactions, but it ends then, and the relationship continues after that, and that's a very, very rich and positive environment to interact in. And then, of course, Japan, if you look out of Tokyo, you have all the possibilities for doing water sports, going skiing, hiking, an endless amount of golf, an unlimited amount of golf courses around and so on. And that is where, yeah, Japan is a life-enriching experience.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah.
The food's fantastic too.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, thank you. Joachim, it's been great chatting with you, and I've enjoyed exploring your career and the different insights you've gained over the years. It's been very valuable. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So join us again for our next episode of Japan's top business interviews.